Good afternoon, friends. Stephen Benoon here with Israeli News Live, our Patreon series on Planet X. What are the signs of Planet X with it coming, with the arrival of Planet X in our solar system, our area? And I'm going to focus mainly, because we just had Hurricane Milton come on shore, I want to look at the weather patterns as far as storms. And that's kind of where I'm going at now. And it also brought me to this very interesting man here, James McCanney. James McCanney has his master's in physics. Very brilliant man. I'm going to be talking a little bit about him today, mainly because of his book and talking about hurricanes. You remember Mr. Farada? The astronomer who predicted the earthquakes. We'll end up going back to that later. We'll be doing a special on that. All this will be exclusive here on our Patreon channel. So definitely share it with your friends and let them know about it. We'll be talking a little bit from the Cobra. They call it a Cobra Bible. I call it a Cobra Document myself because I don't look at it as a Bible, but I definitely like to look at the aspects of it. So let's get right into this video right now. And maybe we can start with the Cobra Document here. This is in Chapter 3 called The Destroyer, Part 1, where it says, and we read this before, but we'll read it again because it's part of our series, men forget the days of the Destroyer. Only the wise know where it went and that it will return in its appointed hour. It raged across the heavens in the days of wrath, and this was its likeness. It was a billowing cloud of smoke, enwrapped in a ruddy glow, not distinguishable in joint or limb. Its mouth was an abyss from which came flame, smoke, and hot cinders. When ages pass, certain laws operate upon the stars in the heavens. Their ways change. There is movement and restlessness. There are no longer constant, and great light appears readily in the skies. When blood drops upon the earth, the destroyer will appear. And mountains will open up, belch forth fire and ashes. Trees will be destroyed, and all living things engulfed. Waters will be swallowed up by the land, and seas will boil. The heavens will burn brightly and redly. There will be a copper hue over the face of the land, followed by a day of darkness. A new moon will appear and break up and fall. The people will scatter in madness. They will hear the trumpet and battle cry of the destroyer will seek refuge within dens in the earth. Terror will eat away their hearts, and their courage will flow from them like water from a broken pitcher. They will be eaten up in the flames of wrath and consumed by the breath of the destroyer. Thus it was in the days of the heavenly wrath which have gone, and thus it will be in the days of doom, when it comes again. The times of its coming and going are known unto the wise. These are the signs of the time which shall precede the destroyer's return. 110 generations shall pass into the west, and nations will rise and fall. Men will fly in the air as birds, and swim in the seas as fishes. Men will talk peace in one with another. Hypocrisy and deceit shall have their day. Women will be as men, and men as women. Passion will be a plaything of man. A nation of soothsayers shall rise and fall, and their tongue shall be a speech learned. A nation of lawgivers shall rule the earth, and pass away into nothingness. One will pass into the four quarters of the earth, talking peace and bringing war. And nations of the seas will be greater than any other, but will be as an apple rotten on the core, will not endure. I'm going to kind of stop right there because this covers all kinds of issues that we'll be doing in all the series that I'm going to be looking at. But of course, the seas will boil. Right there, 3-4, very last statement there, seas will boil. That's one of the things attributed to Hurricane Milton and Hurricane Haiyan. Now, there's a lot of people are saying these are weather weapons. Is it weather weapons? Some say climate change. Or is there really a planetary body that's actually coming? Oddly enough, the Chilean astronomer Manoas Ferrada, he actually, they say here on a quotation, and let me blow this up so we can see it clearly. They said here, he did not say that the great final catastrophe would occur on August 11th of 1999, but then from that date on, the geophysical and climatic changes would intensify, especially earthquakes in the oceans of a volcanic origin with sea quakes and tsunamis. We'll go into those things later in another one of our series of broadcasts here on Patreon, but right now, we just want to keep in mind that the geophysical and climatic changes would intensify since 1999. James said here in his book, and again, let's make sure it's plenty big enough so we can see this right here. The public will also be aware that it is huge encroaching comet that is the cause of all the Earth changes they are seeing, and will all at this time become fully aware of the total incompetence of NASA, who had told them that comets were harmless little dirty snowballs, and to not listen to those who would tell you otherwise. The NASA scientists, too, by this time would be securely locked in their previously prepared cave shelters stocked with provisions for many years to stay. The winds and powerful land hurricanes will begin sweeping out large volumes of vegetation and piling into regions where eventually it will turn into coal hundreds of thousands of years later. That's a very interesting thought, isn't it? Maybe that is why we have so much coal layers beneath the ground. If you think about it, if this type of system comes over, like we know that according to the Cobra, that's the way the Great Flood occurred on the earth. Massive storms for so many days, and then afterwards, of course, and it's just the way it passed. That time it didn't bring fire. Remember, it says God won't destroy the earth with water no more, but next time with fire and brimstone. But no doubt as those storms came and destroyed all the vegetation, and then the mud and stuff covered it up and then created a nice layer bed of coal up underneath it, that as the thousands of years passed, it became exactly that. It's pretty interesting to think about if you ask me, but you know what I find fascinating too? Let's take right here. This here is Hurricane Milton. And some of the damage shown here by, no doubt, a drone taking the footage of this here. Luckily, it went from Category 5 at 160 mile an hour winds because of the nice northerly front that we're enjoying the cooler weather of up here. Sheared off the top of this storm and brought it down to a Cat 3. And the winds rapidly dropped to 120 miles an hour. But that storm surge it brought with it did leave a lot of havoc and devastation, as we can clearly see from some of this footage here. Looking at other places, roofs torn off. A lot of devastation without a doubt, especially when you live in mobile home parks that are near the water. I'm surprised any of them are still standing. And I can tell you one thing, had it came on shore as a Cat 5, you wouldn't see a single mobile home there anywhere. And there are a lot of mobile homes in Florida, which is really beyond me with the fact that hurricanes do come through the area. But I think about this with Milton, right? And Milton, of course, here it is late in the season. We're in October, and we have two hurricanes back to back, all because the waters are so hot. As it said, the waters would be boiling. Imagine what type of storms will be created when you have that type of storms, right? Think about it. Now, I go back, like I said the other day, 1969, and we look at Hurricane Camille. Hurricane Camille had sustained winds of 175 miles an hour. These images here are what I do remember. Not all of them, of course, but I remember specifically one ship inland. I talked about the shrimp boats that would be inland. It took months to clean that mess up. Some estimates of 210 mile per hour winds. It's a wonder that any house actually stood after all of that. But it was a devastating hurricane. And many, many, many more years passed before we ever saw again such dramatic effects like this. But you know what's interesting is if we go back to Menendez Ferrada and what he stated, he talked about, what was that we saw in the article? Let me pull that back up. Where are you? Here we go. 1999. That's when we would start seeing geophysical and climatic changes would begin to intensify, right? Well, what do we have here? 1992. That began one of the most devastating hurricanes that we've seen since Hurricane Camille, Hurricane Andrew. And Hurricane Andrew, as it swept through down in the South Florida area there, it was absolutely, and when it came through, I forget the name of that area that it actually passed through initially, there you go, totally leveled practically every house there was. In some estimates, it is believed that up to 200 mile per hour winds, just like that of Hurricane Camille. And there you see it forming from the satellite. And it didn't seem like it was really going to become much of anything. Just like a little small storm. But the closer it got to Florida, the more deadly this thing became, and very, very quickly. Homestead is what it was. I remember now. Homestead, Florida. When it hit Homestead, this is what it left in its wake. August 24th, 1992. But like I said, he said 1999, we'd start seeing those geophysical changes. This here, the Guardian, showing here, and this is a lot closer to the times that we're living in now. Mexico Beach, and that was Hurricane Michael. This one also, I think, had 165 mile an hour sustained winds at its eye, hitting the panhandle of Florida, just Mexico Beach there, just past the, that was just past Panama City. Been there many, many times. This one here, Hurricane Dorian, 2019. Category 5, 185 miles an hour, hits the Bahamas. What did he say? Now watch this. I want you to just watch this right here. This camera stays going there, right, as it gets closer and closer. I'm going to skip to it a little bit, right? Getting a little bit more windy, a little bit more crazy. Palm trees now really starting to dangle around. Gets a little bit more crazy. Now the wind's coming down. Gets a lot more crazy. More crazy. Just remember how fast those winds ended up getting, right? Now it's really starting to go nuts. I'm surprised these palm trees are even up at this point. Unbelievable. You can see the roof starting to peel off and everything in this picture here. Looks like whoever was there decided they weren't going to stay too much out there again. Look at it still. And those are palm trees that are protected by that building right there, right? It's kind of calmed down a little bit now. But the devastation from 185 mile per hour winds. All right. Then we have also this here, Hurricane Patricia. Strongest hurricane ever recorded, headed straight for Mexico. All right, this one here. Let's take a look at this one. And I think it's 195 mile an hour winds is what this one's going to get up to. I'm sorry, 200 mile per hour sustained winds. 200 sustained. No wonder why they said they would have to call them hurricanes. And I don't know how much of this they'll show in this storm. So powerful, right? And we didn't get to really see anything as far as the damage caused by that. But just imagine the intensity, the waves, the surge of water, no doubt 20 feet high. And then cyclones, or typhoons, Typhoon Haiyan, one of the biggest storms ever. CNN covering this one right here. And let's kind of catch some of this here. Typhoon Haiyan, let's see, and it hits the Philippines.
How big this is. It is not as deep as Gilbert and Wilma in the Atlantic, but the wind speeds are higher than those storms because the eye is so small. This is just the most incredible picture I can show you. That this eye right there, it reminds me of Andrew slamming into South Florida as the eye of Andrew got smaller and smaller. Now, Andrew's eye was the most important part of that storm because that's where the big winds were, 150, 160 miles per hour. This storm is Sandy size in width. This is the entire country of the Philippines. And so there's a lot of bubble here. There's a lot of water under this storm. There's going to be storm surge. 50, maybe 60 feet. All the people along the eastern shores of the Philippines will be moving out and getting to higher ground as a cat.
50 to 60 foot storm surge. That's a tidal wave. That's an absolute tidal wave. Unbelievable. These are the type things that we were to see as this planet moves closer. That's just the storms. And Camille hit several small hurricanes over the years through the 80s. You know, Frederick, others like that, 85, 90 mile an hour, some over 100. Ivan hit 2004. With sustained winds of 140 miles an hour. I think that's when the weather thing broke. But it is believed that it had a much higher wall of water. Came all the way up through the bay, Pensacola Bay, wiping out the bridges as it went. They ended up building those bridges, by the way, and they're probably another 10 foot higher than what they used to be. And now we're seeing more and more hurricanes, much higher winds on a regular basis, that is. What's next? We're going to be talking later, first of the week here, about midweek next week. We'll go into another part of this series. We're going to go into the volcanoes under the seas. We'll talk about land volcanoes. We'll talk about earthquakes. Tsunamis. We'll do a whole series of those climatic events that you will see as this binary system arrives here on Patreon, Israeli News Live. Thank you. God bless you for your support, and have a blessed evening.